Is America a Christian nation? Is Christian nationalism something to be celebrated? One congresswoman thinks so. I've got some different ideas. This is your 8 minutes of political enlightenment. Here we go. I'm Robb Ryerse, the political director of Vote Common Good. We're a group that tries to get religious folks, particularly white evangelicals and white Catholics, to use the common good as their voting criteria. I've spent the last 25 years as a pastor and the past 5 years or so working in politics, so I understand a little bit about the intersection of faith and politics. And at that intersection over the last several years, and increasingly so since January 6th, a part of our political lexicon has grown to include the phrase Christian nationalism. It's this idea that the United States is a Christian nation, that our founding fathers were seeking to start a nation based on Judeo-Christian principles, and it is a guiding idea for so many evangelicals and Catholics who engage in politics today. There's also been a lot of pushback against it. And now there's some pushback to the pushback. I want to play for you something that Congresswoman Majorie Taylor Greene had to say about nationalism and Christian nationalism. Here it is.
You see, nationalism is a good thing. It's where all Americans should be. We should be wanting America first. We should be wanting our tax dollars, our focus, our legislation, our bills, and our leadership focused on our nation. We should be proud of nationalism, and we should be proud of an America first nationalism. And then lastly, we should be most proud of Christianity. So if Christian nationalism is something to be scared of, they're lying to you. And they're lying to you on purpose, because that is exactly the temperature change that is happening in America today, and they can't control it. They can't control it, and that's what terrifies them the most.
So, Congresswoman Greene, I think that you are confusing a couple of things here. I think you're confusing nationalism and patriotism. They're different. Nationalism is this idea, this belief that people are inherently and naturally divided up into mutually distinct and inherently coherent cultural groups. Groups that stick together in a land, stick together in an area, and they're bound together by traits that they share, like language and religion and ethnicity and culture. And that the job of a government is to preserve the cultural identity that is inherent in this group of people that makes up this nation. The problem is that that's not what the United States is all about. I think about the words on the Statue of Liberty about us welcoming those from around the world who are in need. And that has been the history of our country, imperfect though it is. That's been the ideal that we have sought to live up to be that shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan talked about. The vision of America is not one of one inherently coherent, homogeneous group of people, but rather a group of people coming together around a shared set of ideas and values. Patriotism is not nationalism. Patriotism is love for country, wanting what's best for it, including the needed progress that we have to make towards being a more perfect union. We have so far to go. But when Congresswoman Greene talks about this stuff, she is mixing up love for country and nationalism. Patriotism and nationalism are not the same thing. The idea of Christian nationalism is the idea that America is a Christian nation, and as a result of that, Christianity should have some privileged place in our society, in the ongoing negotiation of where my rights begin and yours end, or my responsibilities begin and yours end, and how all of that fits together, how we live together as human beings in a society, in a culture with rights and responsibilities. The idea of Christian nationalism is that the rights that are inherent in a Christian faith get prominence and a place of privilege over any others. And that other people can have rights and responsibilities, but those are secondary to the rights that are expressed within this idea of Christian faith. Now, the problem with this is that it's a fundamental misunderstanding of Christianity. Christianity is not about gaining a place of privilege and a place of prominence. The essence of Christian faith is, in my mind, is summed up by the words of Jesus when he told these stories about people taking places of prominence and how critical it is to not do that, but instead to put others ahead of yourself. Jesus would observe people taking the best seat in the house at a meal, and he would say, no, don't do that. Take the least valuable seat. And those famous words, the first will be last and the last will be first. You see, the essence of Christian faith is about putting the needs, the interests of other people ahead of your own. It is antithetical to Christian nationalism. Any kind of nationalism that is draped in Christianity is not Christian at all. And in fact, Christian nationalism is something to be worried about, is something to be concerned about, is something to be scared about. Christian nationalism led to the insurrection on January 6th that I know Congresswoman Greene doesn't think was a big deal, but many of us do. And Christian nationalism was a huge part of that. So dangerous that it led to the deaths of 6 people. And there's a lot of people who think that Christian nationalism is one of the reasons why we might end up in some kind of civil war in our country. It's something to take seriously. It's something to push back against, both because it misunderstands who we are as a nation and it misunderstands Christian faith. Well, what do you think? Do you think Christian nationalism is something to be nervous about? Do you think America is a Christian nation? Sound off in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And I'd also encourage you to follow and subscribe to the Vote Common Good YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of resources on Christian nationalism. I think there's a whole playlist about it. So check that out and check us out at votecommongood.com.